Welcome to the Let's Not Meet Nightmare playlist. This story is from the Reddit user curlycrumpets, titled, I Saved Her, and Suddenly I Was in Danger. Just to clarify, I am a female in my early 20s now, and this happened when I was about 12 years old. I was in year 8. I'm guessing that's the same as 8th grade in America. Anyway, I was on my way home from school with my friend Kira. Kira was really small and had very childlike features. She was also extremely timid and easily scared. We decided to take a quick detour to the local supermarket for a drink and some snacks. Although this was frightening at the time, I am glad I made the detour. And you will understand why very soon. We got into the shop and went straight to the sweets aisle, and it was fairly empty. There was only me, Kira, and a young Muslim girl who stood staring at all the variety of sweets. She was smaller than Kira, and like I said, Kira was small. If I had to put an age on this girl, I would say she was about 7 or 8. I couldn't see her parents, but just assumed they had told her to choose some sweets and then return to them. I'm a very observant person, naturally, and will instinctively react if I see someone in danger, or figure out what to do if I notice anything suspicious. As we were browsing for sweets, I noticed in the corner of my eye a man stood at the bottom of the aisle, staring. I ignored it for a moment, thinking he was checking on what aisle he needed, but he stayed. He didn't move. I shot a glance over to him and tried to work out why he was standing there. The man was also clearly a Muslim. I would say around the age of 30. For a second, I figured he must have been her father, but something didn't seem right. He was staring blankly at her. I turned to the little girl and then back to the man. I did this several times with no doubt in my mind that he was watching her. If he was with her, surely he would have walked over to her or called her name. He was not her father, her uncle, her brother. I looked towards him again for a moment, and I could tell his eyes were so fixated on her that he didn't even notice me staring at him. I looked away as not to stare too long, but it was bothering me. I could still see him in the corner of my eye. I need to intervene, I thought, silently. Kira had been talking continuously at this point, but somewhere in the conversation I had switched off. She tugged my arm and I turned to her. Something had to be done. The girl's parents were nowhere in sight, and I knew I was the only person who could potentially stop whatever sick ideas this man had for this girl. I looked back at the sweets, but kept the little girl in the corner of my eye as I told Kira to be quiet and I explained what was going on. "Shit," she whispered. "What do we do?" I had been thinking while she panicked. Brave but very naive 12-year-old me decided we should go stand with the girl. We're gonna walk over to her. As we stand next to her, you keep your eyes on the man. Do not take them off him, Kira. I'm going to ask her where her parents are. With that said, we walked over to the girl, one of us at either side of her. My heart was racing with fear of what his intentions were. I tend to get very angry when I'm afraid, and my fear was solely for this girl. I knelt down beside her and said, "Hello, where are your parents?" She looked at me, puzzled, and I realized now that we looked like the creeps, not him. "I'm not sure. They told me to grab what I wanted and go find them." I looked at her face, so sweet and so innocent. I replied, "Would it be okay if we helped you find your parents?" I didn't want her to go find them alone in case the man got to her before they did. "Yes, please," she replied. Kira never took her eyes off the creep the entire time I was speaking with the little girl. She said he looked angry and sort of confused at what was going on just before we took her to find her parents. I took her hand and hurried her along as we searched the few aisles for her mother and father. It didn't take long until we found them. I was relieved as she ran over to them and placed her sweets in the trolley. "Thank you," she said. Her parents looked at us with concern, so I approached them quickly to explain why she just thanked us. I told them that a man had been watching their daughter intensely for the past 5 minutes, and I was worried because I couldn't see her parents. They thanked me many times before I left the shop. I remember how terrified the mother looked as I told her. She took my hand and thanked me again before we left. It's over, I thought. The little girl is safe, and I'm so glad I took that detour. Me and Kira left the shop, and Kira decided she didn't want to go home yet, so insisted I come over to her friend's house with her. "Not today. I really need to get home, otherwise my dad will start to worry." She nodded, and then set off in the opposite direction. I began walking home alone. I felt strange. Something in my gut was telling me to turn around. I walked through the car park and past the usual shops, and then I turned. He was behind me, merely yards away. As soon as I caught his eyes, I turned around and picked up my pace. My heart was pounding. I was only 12, and I knew I couldn't outrun a grown man, and I was way too small to fight him. "Think," I screamed in my head. I kept passing shop after shop. No one was around. It was roughly an hour after school ended by this point, and all the school kids had been to the local shops and gone home, usually in large groups. "The sweet shop," I thought to myself. At the top of this path I was on, inside the car park and supermarket complex, was a small sweet shop. Nearly all the kids from school flocked there after school ended for their cheap sweets. I knew there was a security guard inside, and he was always there. He watched out for the kids stealing sweets. If I can get to the shop before it closes, I'll be safe, I thought. Yes, it closed early on school days, as the only customers were us kids. I was hoping for dear life the shutters weren't down. I knew if it had closed, I didn't stand a chance. My route home was simple, but not so much if you're being chased. After I passed that shop, I had to turn right under a bridge and then climb large stone stairs to walk over the bridge and then walk up a large hill to get home. I didn't stand a chance. Not to mention I had severe asthma, and that made it worse when I get panicked and nervous. I picked up as much pace as possible without running. I didn't want him to think I was aware that I was being followed, and he was walking at a steady pace, but keeping his eyes glued to me. Suddenly, as I was about to reach the shop, I saw the security guard. He stepped out of the shop just as I reached it. I scurried over to him and told him everything that was going on. I told him what happened in the supermarket, and then that he was following me. I felt my heart pounding as the man slowly creeped closer. "I have about a half mile to walk. Please," he cut me off. He looked angry.
"Go now. Don't stop walking. I'll stop him and keep him here as long as I can. Don't look back. Just move as fast as you can."
I ran around the corner and heard the security guard say,
"Stop!"
I then sped walked as fast as my legs could carry me over the bridge. His voice faded as I walked further. I knew he wouldn't let him hurt me. I felt okay. That feeling in my stomach had gone. I was okay. I reached home with no problem. I never told my dad or grandparents, but like I always say, I've always been cautious, and even if I put myself at risk, I'm glad I was able to help that little girl. Hello. If you enjoyed the story, be sure to head over to the user's Reddit page, and stay tuned for more stories from the Let's Not Meet Nightmare playlist.